The bridge of the UES Endurance hummed with nervous energy as Commander Sarah Chun watched the massive alien construct materialize on their view screen. 3 years into humanity's first deep space exploration mission, they'd finally encountered the impossible intelligent alien life. The structure before them defied conventional physics, a crystalline lattice of impossible geometries that seemed to fold space around itself. "Communications incoming," reported Lieutenant Zhang from the ops station. "It's mathematical, pure mathematical language." Chun straightened her uniform, running fingers through her graying hair. At 45, she'd earned her command through 3 colonial wars and the Mars Uprising. Nothing in her military career had prepared her for this moment. The alien transmission resolved into elegant symbols that their AI translated in real time. "Greetings, primitive species. We are the hegemony. Your integration into civilized galactic society is mandatory but peaceful. Surrender your military assets and prepare for elevation." Dr. Elena Vasquez, the mission xenopsychologist, leaned forward from her station. "Commander, the language patterns suggest they've done this before, many times. This isn't first contact, it's conquest disguised as charity." Before Chun could respond, the alien construct pulsed with brilliant light. The tactical display erupted in warnings as 12 massive vessels decloaked around them, each one dwarfing Earth's largest battleships. The lead ship's hull rippled like liquid mercury, weapons ports opening like blooming flowers. "Demonstration commencing," the aliens announced with the casual tone of a weather report. "Target, Mars Terraforming Complex Olympia." Chun's blood turned to ice. Olympia housed 50,000 colonists, families, children, researchers working to make Mars humanity's second home. "All stop, open a channel." "Channel open," Jam confirmed, his voice tight with fear. "This is Commander Sarah Chun of the United Earthship Endurance. We're peaceful explorers." "There's no need for violence." The alien response cut her off like a blade. "Violence is inefficient. This is merely demonstration of consequence. Integration is not negotiable." On the tactical display, Mars bloomed with nuclear fire. The Olympia complex, decades of human achievement, vanished in seconds. 50,000 lives snuffed out to make a point. The bridge fell silent except for the soft beeping of instruments and the barely audible sound of someone crying. Chun's hands clenched into fists. In her 3 decades of military service, she'd seen war's brutality firsthand. But this wasn't war. This was extermination disguised as diplomacy. The alien spoke of civilization while committing genocide with the emotional investment of stepping on insects. "Commander," whispered Lieutenant Morrison from the tactical station, "what are your orders?" Sarah Chun looked at the faces around her young explorers who'd signed up for discovery, not war. Behind them lay Earth, defenseless and unaware that humanity's childhood was ending in fire. Ahead waited an enemy that had just demonstrated they considered human life utterly disposable. She thought of her daughter back on Earth, probably asleep in her college dormitory, dreaming of a future that might never come. The weight of species survival settled on her shoulders like a familiar coat. "Set course for Earth," she commanded, her voice steady as steel. "Maximum burn. And open a channel to Terra Command." "Channel open, Commander." Chun stared at the alien. Ships, memorizing their configurations, their positions, their casual arrogance. "This is Commander Chun to Terra Defense Command. We are at war. I repeat, we are at war. The enemy has superior technology and no concept of mercy. Begin immediate mobilization of all military assets and civilian evacuation protocols." The alien construct pulsed again, amused. "Resistance is illogical. Your species will be elevated or eliminated within 1 solar rotation." Sarah Chun smiled a cold, predatory expression that would have made her ancestors proud. You just made your first mistake, she said quietly. You showed us who you really are. 3 months after the Mars massacre, Lieutenant Jake Morrison crouched in the twisted wreckage of Ceres mining station, checking his ammunition for the third time. The station's corridors had become a maze of improvised fortifications, welded steel plates, and explosive traps that would have made his grandfather's Vietnam veterans proud. Outside, the hegemony fleet maintained their blockade, confident that starvation would accomplish what their precision weapons couldn't. They were wrong. Movement in Sector 7, whispered Corporal Kim through the comm, her voice barely audible. Over the station's dying life support systems. 3 of those floating jellyfish things, plus something new. Morrison shifted position, the motion sending pain through his left shoulder, where alien energy had clipped him 2 weeks ago. The hegemony soldiers, if you could call them, that looked like graceful sea creatures, translucent beings that floated rather than walked. They carried weapons that fired pure energy, wore armor that adapted to threats, and followed tactical patterns so predictable that Morrison's squad had started calling them the Dancers. New contact is big, Kim continued. Looks like they brought their war form. Through a gap in the barricade, Morrison glimpsed the alien war form, a towering, biomechanical construct that moved with fluid precision. Its multiple arms held various weapons, each one probably worth more than Morrison's entire military budget. It looked unstoppable, invincible, perfect. It also looked like it had never faced someone who grew up hunting in the forests of Montana. Rodriguez. You got that surprise ready? Morrison whispered into his comm. Born ready, LT, came the cheerful reply from somewhere in the station's ventilation system. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez had been an explosives expert before the war, the kind of man who could turn a kitchen timer and some mining charges into pure chaos. The alien patrol moved through the corridor with mathematical precision, each soldier maintaining exact distance from the others, their formation textbook perfect. Morrison had studied their tactics for weeks now, and they never varied, never adapted, never showed the chaotic creativity that marked human warfare. The war forms. Sensors swept the area methodically, cataloging threats and calculating responses with digital precision. It detected the humans' crude weapons, analyzed their defensive positions, and determined the optimal approach for elimination with 0 casualties to hegemony forces. What it didn't detect was Rodriguez's gift, a necklace of mining charges wrapped around the station's primary support beam, hidden behind layers of human ingenuity and duct tape. On my mark, Morrison whispered, watching the aliens advance into his kill zone. Remember, these aren't soldiers. They're accountants with weapons. Show them what real war looks like. The war form reached the predetermined position. It's tactical. Systems calculating the final assault sequence. At that moment, Morrison realized something that chilled him to the bone. The aliens weren't just predictable. They were incapable of unpredictability. 50,000 years of civilized warfare had bred the chaos out of them. Mark, he said quietly. The corridor erupted in fire and fury. Rodriguez's charges brought down half the station's superstructure, turning precision formations into scattered confusion. Morrison's squad emerged from positions the aliens hadn't even known existed, firing weapons that mixed military hardware with mining equipment in ways that no tactical computer could predict. But the real shock came when Morrison himself charged the war form directly, armed with nothing but a mining laser and a suicide vest made from reactor coolant. The alien construct's sensors screamed warnings about the human's impossible behavior. No rational being would attack superior forces with obsolete weapons. The war form's last transmission, as Morrison's improvised bomb tore it apart, was a single word that would haunt hegemony tactical analysis for years to come. Impossible. In the aftermath, as the surviving aliens retreated in disorder, Morrison stood among the wreckage, and keyed his comm to the fleet frequency he knew they were monitoring. "This is Lieutenant Jake Morrison, United Earth Marines, to any hegemony forces listening. You want to know the difference between us? You fight wars to win territory. We fight wars to kill the enemy. And we've been practicing on each other for 10,000 years." The silence that followed told him everything he needed to know. Doctor. Elena Vasquez sat in the cramped communications center of Luna Base, surrounded by screens displaying intercepted alien transmissions. The hegemony's elegant mathematical language scrolled past like digital poetry, but the content was anything but beautiful. For 6 months now, she'd been studying their psychology, and what she'd discovered terrified her more than their superior technology. "They're not evil," she murmured to Commander Chun during their daily briefing. "They're worse, they're indifferent. To them, we're not enemies. We're a statistical anomaly to be corrected." Chun leaned back in her chair, exhaustion etched in every line of her face. The war had aged her decades in months. "Can we use that?" Elena pulled up a new file audio recordings from hegemony vessels. "Listen to this. It's from their fleet. Flagship after Morrison's stand at Ceres." The alien voices flowed like water, but the translation software revealed growing tension. Human tactical patterns remain irrational. Casualties among hegemony forces exceed projections by 347%. Request tactical recalibration. "And this," Elena continued, switching to a more recent transmission, "is from yesterday's engagement at Europa. Warning: human behavior suggests possible psychological instability. Individual specimens demonstrate willingness to sacrifice themselves for no quantifiable gain. Recommend immediate psychological evaluation of species." Chun raised an eyebrow. "They think we're insane." "No," Elena said, pulling up her analysis charts. "They think we're impossible. Look at their language evolution over the past 6 months. They've had to create 17 new mathematical concepts just to describe human behavior in combat. Terms like irrational courage, suicidal creativity, and tactical insanity." She highlighted a particularly interesting exchange between alien commanders. "The humans fight as if they expect to die. This should make them weak, but instead makes them terrifyingly dangerous. Our predictive models cannot account for behavior that defies survival instinct." Elena stood and began pacing, her excitement building. "Don't you see? They've spent 50,000 years perfecting warfare as an intellectual exercise. Mathematical conflicts with predetermined outcomes. They've forgotten that war isn't about logic, it's about breaking your enemy's will to resist. So how do we use this?" Chun asked. Elena smiled an expression that would have looked perfectly at home on a medieval battlefield. "We remind them what real fear feels like." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Using captured hegemony communication networks, Elena began broadcasting human cultural artifacts directly into their ship systems. Not propaganda, that would be too crude. Instead, she transmitted the raw, unfiltered essence of human warfare. Sent them recordings of Viking war chants, the blood-curdling screams of Celtic warriors, and the methodical brutality of Roman legions. She transmitted footage from Earth's bloodiest conflicts, not the sanitized versions from history books, but the genuine article, complete with the sounds and smells and desperate fury of humans fighting for survival. But the coup de grace was the audio she'd compiled from their own intercepted transmissions, human voices in the heat of battle, speaking words that no hegemony language could properly translate. Remember the Alamo? Death before dishonor, no surrender. The effect was immediate and devastating. Hegemony crew efficiency dropped by 30% as their mathematical minds struggled to process concepts like honor, vengeance, and berserker rage. Their predictive algorithms began producing error messages when trying to calculate human responses to tactical situations. The breakthrough came when Elena intercepted a private communication between two hegemony commanders. Analysis complete. The humans are not fighting for territory or resources. They are fighting for the abstract concept of not losing. This creates tactical scenarios with infinite variables. Recommendation? Unknown. Mathematical models suggest species-wide psychological pathology. They appear to prefer mutual destruction over submission. Elena leaned back in her chair, satisfied. Phase 1 was complete. She'd introduced doubt into minds that had known only certainty for millennia. But Phase 2 would be even better. She opened a channel to the hegemony fleet and began broadcasting, the most terrifying sound in human history. Silence before a human warrior decides that survival is less important than making the enemy remember why they should fear the dark. The psychological war had begun. Asterisk. Captain Marcus Webb felt the defiance shudder around him as another hegemony. Energy beam carved through her hull. His cruiser, one of Earth's newest and most advanced warships, was dying by inches. Her crew fighting with desperate courage against impossible odds. Through the viewscreen, he watched the alien dreadnought Eternal Harmony approach like a predator, circling wounded prey. Hull breach on decks 4 through 7, reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Park, her voice steady despite the blood streaming from a head wound. Engineering reports, we've lost main power to the forward weapons array. Webb checked his tactical display 1,500 enemy ships surrounding the Sol system like a metallic noose. Humanity's combined fleet had been reduced to fewer than 200 vessels, most of them damaged beyond repair. By any rational measure, the war was over. That was their first mistake, assuming humans were rational. Sir, Park continued, the hegemony flagship is hailing us. They're offering surrender terms. The alien voice filled the bridge with its melodic arrogance. Human vessel defiance. Your resistance serves no logical purpose. Your species has fought admirably, but uselessly. Accept integration protocols, and your surviving crew will be relocated to suitable habitats. Webb looked around his bridge, at Park clutching her wounded head, but still at her post, at Ensign Torres manually rooting power while sparks cascaded around him, at Chief Murphy, who'd probably been killed in the engine room, but whose jury-rigged repairs were still keeping them flying. These weren't just his crew, they were his family, and families don't abandon each other. Open a channel, he ordered quietly. Channel open, sir. Webb straightened in his captain's chair, thinking of his grandfather who'd died at Normandy, his father who'd fought in the corporate wars, and every human warrior who'd ever faced impossible odds with nothing but courage and spite. This is Captain Marcus Webb of the UES Defiance to the hegemony flagship. I have a counter-proposal. The alien response carried a note of curiosity. Specify terms. Webb smiled the same expression his Celtic ancestors had worn when facing Roman legions. Go to hell. He cut the transmission and turned to his crew. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got one last card to play. Chief Murphy's final gift. She managed to rig our reactor to overload, but only if we get close enough to their flagship. Park's eyes widened. Sir, that's suicide. No, Webb corrected. That's tactics. The hegemony has superior technology, superior numbers, and superior strategy. But they have one fatal weakness. They think like accountants. They've never met anyone crazy enough to win by losing. He opened ship-wide communications. All hands, this is the captain. We're about to do something the enemy will never expect because it violates every principle of civilized warfare. We're going to ram their flagship with a reactor set to overload. Anyone who wants to reach the escape pods has 60 seconds. The bridge fell silent except for the sound of damage alarms and the distant rumble of dying engines. Then Park spoke up. Permission to remain at my post, sir. Denied, Webb said firmly. You've got a daughter on Earth who needs her mother. With respect, sir, Park replied, checking her weapons console. My daughter needs a future where humans don't kneel to aliens. I'm staying. One by one, the remaining bridge crew confirmed their positions. Webb felt pride swell in his chest, not the mathematical satisfaction the aliens called emotion, but the fierce joy of warriors who'd chosen how their story would end. All engines ahead full, he commanded. Set collision course for the hegemony. Flagship, the Defiance surged forward, her dying engines screaming defiance at the laws of physics. The alien fleet scrambled to intercept, energy beams slashing through space, but Webb's ship was already committed to her final trajectory. Through the tactical link, he heard alien voices raised in something approaching panic. Impossible behavior. Detected. Human vessel approaching at ramming speed. Tactical analysis indicates guaranteed mutual destruction. Correct their course. Unable to comply. Human ship has disabled its own maneuvering systems. Webb laughed a sound that would have made Viking berserkers proud. That's right, you bastards. We're the species that invented kamikaze attacks for fun. Let me show you what real war looks like. The Eternal Harmony tried to evade, but she was too massive, too elegant, too perfect to match the desperate fury of a dying human warship. The Defiance struck her amidships at 17% of light speed, and Chief Murphy's reactor overload turned both vessels into a miniature stardot in the expanding fireball. Humanity's message was clear. We would rather die free than live as slaves. And if you want to conquer us, you'd better be prepared to kill every last one of us. The psychological impact rippled through the hegemony fleet like a shockwave. For the first time in 50,000 years, they'd encountered an enemy that considered death preferable to defeat. That was when they began to understand what they were really fighting. Asterisk. 6 months later, Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood in the crystalline halls of the hegemony homeworld. Nexus Prime, watching alien dignitaries struggle with concepts their civilization had forgotten millennia ago. The formal surrender ceremony had concluded an hour ago, but the real negotiations were just beginning. Around her, 12 different species, each representing billions of souls, waited to learn what price humanity would demand for peace. The irony wasn't lost on her. The same psychological warfare she'd pioneered had ultimately won the conflict, not through human victory, but through alien capitulation. The hegemony hadn't been defeated. They'd been terrified into submission by an enemy that fought wars they couldn't comprehend. The terms are non-negotiable, Elena stated calmly, addressing the assembled coalition through their universal translator. Complete withdrawal from all human-occupied systems, reparations for Mars and the other colonies, and establishment of a neutral zone extending 50 light-years from Earth. The hegemony's prime coordinator, a being that looked like living. Starlight contained in geometric patterns, pulsed with what Elena had learned to recognize as distress. Ambassador Vasquez. These terms are ... extreme. The neutral zone alone encompasses 17 inhabited systems and 2 major trade routes. Elena smiled, the expression carrying echoes of every human who'd ever stared down superior force with nothing but will. Consider it cheap. We're still offering you the chance to surrender with dignity intact. Around the chamber, alien representatives shifted nervously. They'd spent months analyzing human combat recordings, trying to understand how a species with inferior technology had not only survived their assault, but turned it into a galactic-wide nightmare. The mathematics were clear: humans didn't fight to win battles. They fought to destroy enemies so completely that surrender became preferable to continuation. There is something we must understand, spoke the Zephyrian delegate, her crystalline form chiming like wind through glass. Your species' combat behavior violates every principle of civilized warfare. You sacrifice valuable resources for abstract concepts. You prioritize psychological impact over tactical advantage. You prefer mutual destruction to strategic withdrawal. Elena nodded thoughtfully. That's correct. Why? The simple question hung in the chamber's recycled atmosphere like a physical presence. Elena looked around at faces, if they could be called, that representing the pinnacle of galactic civilization. Beings who'd mastered faster-than-light travel, conquered death itself in some cases, and created a peaceful interstellar society that had lasted 50 millennia, and they couldn't understand why humans would choose death over slavery. Because, Elena said softly, peace without freedom isn't peace, it's just quiet slavery. You've created a beautiful, ordered galaxy where everyone knows their place and follows the rules. But you forgot something important. Some things are worth fighting for, even if you can't win. She activated her personal display, showing images from Earth children playing in parks, couples walking hand in hand, artists creating beauty from chaos, scientists pushing the boundaries of knowledge, not for profit, but for the sheer joy of discovery. This is what we fight for, she continued. Not territory or resources, but the right to be magnificently, chaotically, dangerously human. You offered us elevation, integration, civilization. We chose to remain ourselves. The prime coordinator's patterns shifted to what Elena recognized as confusion. But the cost ... your casualties, the destruction ... double quotes, were acceptable. Elena finished firmly. Every human who died in this war died free. Can your citizens say the same? The silence that followed was deafening. Around the chamber, representatives of advanced civilizations contemplated a question they'd never considered. In their pursuit of perfect order, had they traded away everything that made existence meaningful? A treaty stands as written, Elena announced, gathering her materials. We'll establish diplomatic relations, of course. Trade agreements, cultural exchanges, scientific cooperation, all the benefits of galactic citizenship. But as equals, not subjects. As she prepared to leave, the Zephyrian delegate spoke again. Ambassador, there is one final question. If we had never attacked Mars, never threatened Earth, would first contact have proceeded differently? Elena paused at the chamber's entrance, considering. Probably. Humans are actually quite peaceful when we're not being invaded or enslaved. We prefer building to destroying, creating to conquering. But understand this, we've survived ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, plague, famine, and 10,000 years of our own violence. We're still here because when pushed to the edge, we don't break. She smiled one last time, not the predatory grin of a warrior, but the warm expression of someone who'd helped secure her species' future. We bend, and then we snap back so hard it breaks whatever pushed us. As Elena walked through the corridors of alien power toward her transport, she reflected on the strange victory they'd achieved. Humanity hadn't conquered the galaxy. They'd simply convinced it that conquest came at too high a price. Behind her, in the crystalline chamber, 12 alien species began the long process of learning to live with neighbors who'd proven that civilization's greatest achievement wasn't the elimination of violence. It was knowing when violence was necessary, and having the courage to pay that price. The galaxy would never be quite the same. And that, Elena thought with satisfaction, was exactly the point. Asterisk.